would like to introduce Don Mizell, who will discuss the 100-year history of his Broward County family and the renaming of John U. Lloyd Park on Dania Beach in their honor. And those are the posters that we did. So would you like to stand or sit, whatever's good for you?
I'll stand until I can't stand.
Okay, I'll be behind you.
Okay. Okay, so, hi, hello. First, let me just thank everybody for coming. But I have members of my family here that I want to acknowledge. My cousin Lorraine. Okay, she's the daughter of Ivory Mizell, my uncle, who is one of the major domos I'll talk about today. My cousin, Angela, Angela, please stand. I want y'all to be clear that she's not Kamala Harris. But I would vote for her anyway. And then, of course, I have to acknowledge a very important person, the county commissioner, Robert McKenzie, my friend. Robert, please stand. And Robert and Lorraine had a big hand in helping me get Chris Smith to get the park renamed for Dr. Mizell, okay? So I just want you to know they're historically significant to what I'm about to say as well. Can I get your help putting this back in here, Andy? I don't want to hold this. And I don't want to break it either. Hmm? Oh, I didn't see you. Hi. Okay, so stand up, Kim. Kim is the granddaughter of Dr. Mizell, okay? Who is always late, so I didn't see her. Sorry. But she's gorgeous. Okay. So, and my friend Jerry Hadley, who is from Attucks, class of 67. All right. So look, I have a complicated story to tell, and I've been really stressing over how I could tell it because I'm old now, and I don't remember shit. So bear with me. I'm going to give it my best. What I really want to do is to talk about the Mizell family, but I want to focus on Grandpa and Grandma because they never get talked about. And people don't know a lot about them because they didn't talk a lot. So it was really hard to get that information. We know a lot about Dr. Mizell. We know a lot about the Mizell family. And the main thing, I'm going to brag a little bit, but it's all verifiable. I hope you don't mind. But rather than me talk about it, I'm going to show you a clip from a film that's very significant in the naming of the park, too. So, Adam, it's very short, and it was me when I was looking good. That was 15 years ago. And I was on TV, my favorite place, other than my bed. Okay, hit the lights. And this was when I was on County Line with Frank, my friend, Frank Locanto. And I had just kind of gotten back in town, and I was kind of laying out what I really wanted to try to do, and that was 6 years before we got the park named, okay? So this is part of the history, too. Go right ahead, please.
And welcome to the special edition of County Line. When you read the history of Broward County in South Florida, the Mizell family name is prominently featured. From the family patriarch Isadore Mizell Sr. 100 years ago to the present day, this is a family that has made quite an impact socially and politically, not only here, but also throughout the United States and abroad. My guest today is a part of the new generation of Mizells who continue to uphold the family name and traditions. And I welcome Don Mizell to the table, and welcome to you, Don.
Frank, how are you?
It's good to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me. But I think what makes the Mizell family legacy unique is that they were pioneers in certain areas where the community had a profound need. And they provided that service at a level that was comparable to what was being offered in the general society. So to have built the first school, the first hospital, the first library, the first funeral home, and these are fundamental services that was our response to segregation, as to go ahead and provide those services at a level that was comparable to the larger society. And so they said in their heyday that the Mizells were there when you were born. They took pictures of you throughout your life. They taught you. When you got sick, they healed you. They built your house, and they prayed for you when you died. Okay,
And they buried you.
And they buried you at the funeral home. And so the arc of your life, the cycles of your life, the stages of your life, as it were, every step of the way, when you had a need, the Mizells were there to provide it. And that is the sum of the legacy, is leadership service. And I think that may be what is unique.
Boom. Thank you. Sure. Okay. Okay, so that's the overarching theme. Leadership through service. Okay? Okay, let me start it. Yeah. Okay. You can keep those lights off if it'll help see there. Is that all right? Okay, so that's Grandpa. And he is the patriarch. He is the key person from whence all of these things happen. And his name is Isadore Mizell. And as you can tell, you could confuse him with being a Jew. Okay, and his lovely, lovely wife, my grandma Minnie, who I won't talk about right away. But Grandpa was the son of an ex-slave, my grandma, his grandmother, Nancy, who was brought over as a slave. Now, here's a tricky little thing about the Mizells, and it's funny, I guess you all watch, Finding Your Roots and so forth. It's very interesting. But, the black experience is often one where there was slavery involved, and there was rape, and, miscegenation, and a lot of, really awful things. And the Mizells are no different. So Nancy was captured in West Africa and brought over as a slave and sold to Isom. The Mizells are not Mizells, they're Isoms. Isom is the one who bought her and then had children with her. And she had 2 sons, I believe, and a daughter. And at a certain point, I guess, when she was no longer all that valuable to Isom, he sold her to Mizell and left the daughter, the girl, on this auction block. So the family was separated, and the 2 sons who could work were brought to Florida, okay, by way of Georgia, to northern Florida. And Mizell did not have children with Nancy. He wanted those boys to work, okay? And one of them was Henry. There he is. Is that Henry or Grandma? That's Henry. That was Grandpa's father. Isadore Mizell's father was the son of Nancy. Okay? So, now, Henry had 8 sons, and one of them was Isadore. And this was all in North Florida, around Jasper, White Springs, okay? And so Grandpa was born in 1883. Now, if you know anything about American history, that was a brutal time. That was the backlash and the retrenchment from Reconstruction, where black folks had made a lot of progress. They were in the Senate. They were getting elected mayor. They were making money. They were kicking butt. Okay, they were doing their thing, and that was a real problem for the racist white folks who had a problem with, okay, I don't want to be around you, but if I'm not around you and you start doing good, well, I'm not happy about that either. So I might have to kill you, burn your town down, lynch you, take your money, take your land. I can't figure out, like, okay, you can't come around me, but you can't get over without me either, because if you do, that proves that what I'm saying about you isn't true, so now I got to kill you. Okay? And in any case, you're not going to be able to do and be who I say you're not. And I can't have any proof of that. So therefore, I'm going to lynch you. I'm going to burn your whole town down. And especially if you're the smartest, the richest, the most successful, you got to die. And if you really start kicking butt, then I have to accuse you of wanting white women. So now I got to really kill you. And that was the line. And this was when the Ku Klux Klan emerged. Night riders in white sheets and da-da-da-da-da. And this was when Grandpa was born, 1883. And he grew up in that environment. Now, North Florida had slavery. It had plantations. North Florida was Georgia. Hello? Hello? Is there a problem? There is a problem. I'm talking. Okay. So
I'm speaking.
I'm speaking. And I'm talking. And I'm talking shit. Okay. So look, at the end of the day, there was around, this got so bad up there that black folks said, well, we got to get out of here. We can't keep up with this. They're burning the towns down. They're lynching us. This is crazy. So that was when, around the turn of the century, something happened called the Great Migration. All right? The Great Migration was when black folks said, you can't live with me, you can't live without me. We're out. And they all picked up and went north. It's the most significant migration in the history of America within the country, was black folks picking up from the deep South after they had been able to be successful when the Union troops were down in the South protecting their ability to be full citizens and human beings, and they went north. But some of these Negroes went south. What? Why would you go further south? What? And why would it be my grandfather, Isadore Mizell? Like, is he crazy? Is he stupid? What? Why don't you get up and go where everybody else is going, up north? Why would you go further south? Why would you go so far south you can't even go any further south? You went more south than the deep South. You went like to the deepest South. Why? Why would you do that? There's nobody down there but alligators, mosquitoes, and Indians in the swamp. There's no air conditioning. Why would you do that? Well, how about this? They just put a railroad in recently. And people are starting to go down there, and it's the rich white folks going down there from the north. They're not the Southern crackers. They have money. And they didn't get it from slavery in the plantation. They have a different mentality. Okay, and how about this? Ain't no crackers down there ready to kill me if I do something. How about this? Nobody's down there at all. The land is just there, but it's all swamp. It's the Everglades. Whoa. But wait a minute. What about, even though you've only gone to the 3rd grade, you have figured out, well, let me go down there where ain't nobody at. Where nobody cares whether I'm there or not, because nobody's there. And I go down there, and nobody thinks there's any land that can be farmed because it's swamp. But how about this? They're about to drain the swamp. Whoa, well, how would you know that? Well, I can read even though I didn't, pass the third grade. So Grandpa goes down there when he hears about they're about to drain the swamp. And it's going to be the best farming land in America. And how about this? There's no slavery down there because nobody never been down there to be, except to go run the Indians into the swamp. And after they set up Fort Lauderdale in the Seminole Wars, they left. Nobody was there. Nobody wanted the land. And because there wasn't any, we just got to keep these Indians from acting like they're in charge because we done took over now. When the Indians are like, well, why don't you come up in here in the swamp and see what we got for you with these alligators? No, you can have that. You can stay right there. Gotcha. We'll be back if you come out. Well, we're not coming out. Okay, so here comes Grandpa in a horse and buggy by himself because he's trying to see, well, maybe I can find some land. I am not taking no orders from no white people. I'm not sharecropping. I am not tenant farming. I want to see if he heard that there was a Homestead Act, federal Homestead Act, where you could go and get land. And if you farmed it, it was yours if you made it into something valuable. It was free because he don't have no money. He ain't got no money. He ain't got nothing. All he's got is his brain, but he does know how to farm, but he don't want to farm for no white people. And he's not going to take no orders. And he'd rather go where they ain't than where they are, no matter, even if they're supposed to be progressive up north. There's too many of you Negroes going there. I'm going to go the other way. Whoa, that's a Mizell for you. I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to go where I can be in charge of myself, regardless of who and what and where, as long as I'm not taking any orders, as long as I can take advantage of my skill set and of my intelligence and of my self-reliance. I've got the American pioneering spirit myself. I am an American pioneer myself. And this is the last frontier in America. The last. It's not California. It's South Florida. It's the last frontier. Okay? And the Indians are hiding in the swamp. They're not coming out to kill you. You go in there, you'll get killed, but we're not coming out. Okay? So Grandpa goes down in 1907, right when they start draining the swamp. How does he know? I don't know that answer. He certainly did not tell me. It's nowhere. Grandpa didn't say much. And he spoke very quietly. But he was a very strong guy, quiet and smart. And he grew up with seven brothers. He was one of 8. And he went down and went into a town called Modelo, which was in a county that was Miami-Dade and Palm Beach. There was no Broward County. Grandpa came down here when the county was not a county, and Fort Lauderdale was not even a city. And Dania was not even Dania. Now that is a pioneer. Grandpa came down to Modelo. Why? I don't know, but I'm trying to figure it out. Trying to really see what was the story. And what I think was because it was the first incorporated city in the area. Dania is the oldest city in Broward County. Dania was here before Broward County was a county. And if you were incorporated, you might have some laws, you might have some protections, you might have a way forward if it's just the Wild Wild West, which it was. Okay? And then he goes and gets the land and starts farming it. And he gets his wife and comes down, and they have a son in 1910 named Von D. Mizell. And then later, a couple of years later, the second son, Ivory Mizell, Lorraine's father. And then the third wheel, Ethel Mizell, who was the female version of the male Mizell, because she was a badass, okay? And Ethel was a badass, okay? Straight up. And then I'll tell you about Roy Mizell a little bit later. But the long and the short of it is that Grandpa went and got land before you had to buy it. And he never had to sharecrop. And he never had to tenant farm. And he farmed because he already knew how to farm. And then he also knew how to build. He was a carpenter. And that was the basis of the wealth he accumulated. He came down here with nothing. He died a multimillionaire when he was 105. Now that's Isadore Mizell. He had 14 kids, and they turned out to be the most prominent, significant African American family in the history of Broward County in the 20th century. But none of them were born in Fort Lauderdale, but they all went and colonized Fort Lauderdale. But they grew up in Dania, which was a little town. Well, I was saying now, not only did he go there for the fact that it was incorporated, but how about this? It was incorporated by the Danes. Europeans from Denmark, they were not Southern crackers. How about that? Weren't tripping the way Southern plantation owning crackers were. They were there to farm tomatoes. Whoa. Well, how about this? Grandpa, and they were like happy to have some tomato farming because nobody was there. So Grandpa went where the crackers weren't. Think about that. Now that's a Mizell for you. And that's part of the legacy that I have really tried to dig down and see, well, what was up with, why would Grandpa go south? Are you kidding? Well, he actually went south to where it was less crackers. And nobody else, because it wasn't that many Danes. It was a small little town. And everybody was friendly and nice. So he wasn't running up against, now look, there was racism. Yeah. And it got worse when the farming started really getting going, okay? Because there's a paradox in American history. It's like when we need you Negroes, we're going to put the hammer on you more. We're not going to honor the fact that you're contributing that much to the economy and respect you the way we would if you were white. We're going to make sure we put the hammer on you while we milk you and exploit you. So ironically and paradoxically, when it started really happening, when people found out, oh shit, they drained the swamp and the farming, and now they got a railroad and tourism and agriculture, and it's the best land. They call it muck. It's blacker than dirt. It's like the greatest. And the tomatoes are the best tomatoes in the world. How about this? They became the tomato capital of the world. And Grandpa is the leading Negro in the tomato farming charge. And the Danes are not messing with him. As long as he didn't go over there trying to act like he's white, even though you could have confused him as a Jew, okay? You got me? Are you with me? Isn't that a wild story? I mean, it's completely wild. So the Mizell legacy is wild. It's very weird and strange and unique. And let me just tell you, Grandpa and Grandma were like a Norman Rockwell painting, okay? When you saw them, he could have had a pitchfork because he always wore overalls. Every day of the week. Every day of the week, Grandpa had on overalls. And every day of the week, he worked from sunup to sundown. And they had it all figured out. And Grandma was the sweetest grandma you could ever imagine. I mean, sweeter than any of that cake you just ate. Okay? And Grandpa was a hard ass, tough as nails. You know, like Theodore Roosevelt used to say, talk softly and carry a big stick. Well, Grandpa talked softly and carried a big pitchfork. And he owned the land, and he was trying to have as many kids as he could so he could farm the land that he owned. And then he was having Negroes help him, but he was treating them better than the white men who were now coming and hiring. But then when the crackers started coming, they started wanting the land the Negroes had. And they started, which is what they did throughout the South. They would just take your land. Gunpoint, terrorists, thuggery, criminals, okay? death. You'll die. I don't want you to succeed. And then later on, well, why y'all don't succeed? Excuse me? How about, I'm just trying to stay alive now for the right now. No, but I'm going to kill you anyway. Why? I don't know. Okay. So it's a trip. Now, here's Grandma, her story. She was Minnie Moore. She came from the same area. And her grandfather was white too. So Grandpa and Grandma's grandfathers were rapists. Okay? Both. From the same area. And they married, and they had a marriage that lasted 10,000 years. They had 14 kids, and her job was to have more kids to go out in the farm and work the field. And Von D. Mizell, Ivory Mizell, Ethel Mizell, they had to work like they were slaves of Isadore Mizell. They didn't get paid at all. But they were well fed and well clothed and well worked. And they had to go to schools. Two things they had to do: go to school and go to church. And that was not optional. And Ethel told me when she was very old, Papa, they used to call him Grandpa Papa. I couldn't call him Papa. It's not my Papa. You know how that goes, though. Papa used to make us, right after we got home from school, we had to go out in the field and work every day except Sunday. And she wasn't too happy about it either. I said, oh, so you're a hard ass too, huh? She was like a hard ass who wanted to be the kind of mother she had to other children, not necessarily her own. Okay? They were under the hammer. But Aunt Ethel used to go around and help all these other kids. She was the den mother and this and that. So, these are things I've been trying to really figure out for this talk, because I really want to go deep and really try to see better. Why was this family so extraordinary? Well, Grandma had to stay in the house and do whatever Isadore said, and she had no problem with it. She had a big house that he built. He's a carpenter. They got all this land in the back and all this food growing that they're going to eat. They don't have to go and ask for nothing. They don't have to go buy nothing. They got everything. It's right there. But they got to get it out the ground, and Grandpa's going to make sure that these children do it, along with some other people. And then Grandma's job was to cook and sew all day, every day. And she had no problem. And the girls had to help her in the house with the cooking and the sewing. Okay? See? They're calling me. All right? So, and Grandma was a phenomenal cook. And they had all this food. They had so much food that in the Depression, somebody told me this. They said, when we were so hungry that when we came out of school, we could go by Miss Mizell's house and go around the back every day after school, and she had prepared some food for us to eat before we went home. I go, what? She said, yeah, it was a lot of us. They had that much food, and Grandma had cooked that much food, and she was giving it away to the hungry, and nobody knew, and it wasn't, very quietly, and Grandpa had no problem with it whatsoever, as long as he had the complete feast he was about to eat when he came home. And because he would be the one who got to eat first. He sat at the head of the table. He was the conventional patriarch, all right? And he would come home for lunch every day and have a full meal, because, see, if you're working in the fields or you building houses like that, you burn up a lot of calories. You need to eat. So he would have like what we would call dinner for lunch. And they didn't call dinner, they called dinner supper. And that would be another one. And I remember, Lorraine and I, she's older than me. I know she don't like to admit it. But when we went down there sometime on Sunday, the whole family, all the kids, grandkids, would be down there. It would be like Thanksgiving every Sunday. You sit down at this long table, all black folks, right? And grandma's got like two big bowls of meat, three vegetable bowls, three starches, two desserts, two breads, and you pass the bowls around. It was so much food. And grandpa would make homemade ice cream. The best ice cream to this day I've ever had. Okay? Ever. That was his job, was on Sunday to make vanilla ice cream. And I used to go watch him do it. They got the ice down there and put it down. It was just, I could not wait to get some of that ice cream. But you couldn't get but so much because there was a lot of people. And they all wanted more than you. And you're just a little skipper, you're like 8 years old. Shut up and, be happy. Okay? So that was the experience. And, let me tell you about Grandpa as a builder. Now, he was not just a farmer because, see, when he started farming and then they started wanting to get the land, he had land on towards the beach. They took it. But they didn't take the land across the track. Okay? And so what Grandpa did was he let that go and then he diversified into carpentry. He became a builder. Robert McKenzie is a builder too, in addition to being a politician. My father was a builder, and he became a builder because he got that from Grandpa. Grandpa was a hell of a carpenter too, and he did that, and he started building houses for Negroes. And then he started being a landlord. Okay? So now he owned land, he's buying land quietly, and then he's switching over, and now he's building, and now he's renting. And he's figuring out how to keep making money. If you take this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to keep that. Okay? So I just remember this. This used to trip me out. My brother Greg and I, we were with my dad, and we, Sundays, my parents are still married, which I'm amazed I can remember. It was so long ago. But we go down there, and on Sundays, Grandpa did not have on overalls. He had on another uniform, which was a white shirt with black pants and a black cowboy hat. And a little, those cowboy things with the strings on it. Okay? Every Sunday. That was it. And what he would do, he had a big box or a huge box of Mr. Good bars. And what Grandpa would do is get up early and then go around to all of his properties on the way to church. The church he actually built, St. Ruth's, he built the first church and the first school for colored kids in Broward County. Okay? And that was in Dania, not Fort Lauderdale. But Grandpa used to get up and go around and collect his rent on Sunday morning when Jesus was participating in the effort. And get all of his money before he went to church. He was loaded. But with the kids of the renters, he would give each one of them a Mr. Goodbar candy bar on the way out, which the parents were pissed, but the kids were happy. I was like, Grandpa's got game, man. Whoa. And then he would give us one, but only one. Don, you want a Mr. Goodbar? I was like, I want two, Grandpa. You're not getting two. You don't get more than what you're going to get, but what you're going to get is more than what you were about to get, and now be happy, and I ain't got nothing else for you. Okay, Grandpa. Well, how about the ice cream? Well, you have to wait on that. But you can get this Mr. Goodbar right now. Okay, so Grandpa collected all of his rent on Sunday morning and went to church fully loaded and put a bunch of money into the coffers. He put the tenants' money in the church because he was deeply, deeply religious. And he deeply, deeply believed in Christianity, okay? He believed in two things, education and church. So much so that Lorraine's father became a minister too, among other things. Okay? And he got that from grandpa. You could be sure of that. So, and everybody, all of mine except my father, went to church religiously, which is another story. But my father did marry the preacher's daughter. A lot of good that did me. Okay, so that's the story of is now Grandpa told me, and I'm trying to make this talk about Grandpa because he doesn't get his props, and I think it's a very interesting story because I'm trying to give you the prism of tell you the story of early Florida and black folks through the prism of his experiences, even though they were very distinct. Okay? And mind you, he only had a third grade education, but he sent every one of his children to college that wanted to go. Okay? He built the first school. How about that? And there were no schools high schools in Dania. There was no attics. He had to send them up to St. Augustine. Okay? But he had the money to do it. And they went. Especially Von D, who was brilliant. He just blazed through everything like, boom. He was a genius, really, by the way. And Ivory was pretty smart, but Ivory was like, Pancho and Cisco. Hey, Cisco, wait for me. But Pancho was right there, but Cisco was riding up ahead. But they were pals. And Aunt Ethel was a smart, but she was a woman, and you had problems. Women did not get the props and the opportunities, but she still wound up getting a master's from Columbia University in 1955, long before black folks were able to go to Ivy League schools. They were highly educated, and Grandpa knew education was the key. So when there wasn't a school, he built it. And when we couldn't build a high school, he sent his kids where. And then he made it, you could, if you wanted to go to college, you could go. And he paid for it, all of this. Okay? Meanwhile, Grandma is cooking and sewing and being sweet and kind. Okay? And teaching all of her daughters and the neighborhood girls how to handle things, how to cook, how to sew, and how to behave. And all of them pretty much went out and married preachers or somebody. Okay? Somebody who was an upright, standing paragon of the community. They couldn't bring no half-stepping, jive-ass motherfuckers up in there. That wasn't happening, okay? Straight up, and they were gorgeous. So, look, Grandpa was a bad mofo. Grandma was the sweetest thing you ever wanted to, know. Okay, let me just see here. Okay, that's Grandma's grandfather, Billy Moore, whose father was white. This is Grandma again when she's old. See how sweet she is? I mean, this is the sweetest thing in the world. Okay, this is me. I think Lorraine's in here. My father, Grandma. This is the Mizell brood when they started having grandchildren. Okay? I think your mom's in there, Angela. Okay, I mean, her mom was gorgeous and brilliant. She's the one on the right, second to the right. Right in the middle, that guy in the middle with the two little Negroes flanking him, that's my dad and me and my brother when I was 5 years old, okay? You got it? And then Grandma is in the middle. Her sister, Aunt Lottie, is to her right. Aunt Ethel who was a pistol, she's to the far left standing. Okay, Bernice is to her left, and my mother is to her left, and Irvine is to her right. So it's a lot of kids, but it was a family thing. And usually on Sundays, a massive gathering of the clan is the story. Okay, now this is Grandma, her sister, Aunt Lottie. Now, Aunt Lottie is a trip, Grandma's sister to the right. She had a mustache, which I couldn't figure out. Well, what's up with that? And she had no children. Grandma, her sister had 14. She didn't have any. I didn't know anything about hormones and this and that, right? That maybe she couldn't have kids. I didn't even think that was a concept. Okay? But she was the best seamstress in the world. Better than grandma because grandma had to cook a lot and sew. And she was only sewing. And she was married to Uncle Moreland, who looked white. And their house in Fort Lauderdale was right next to the tracks. So the tracks was the dividing line of the races. And because Uncle Moreland looked white, he built his house right on this side of the track so he could go and pass for white during the day and come back home after that and be a Negro. And Uncle Moreland was really a fantastic cat. I was like, is he white? You know, I couldn't even figure out what is his story, but he looked white, but he acted black. And he was from Valdosta, Georgia, or some Brunswick, Georgia. And he used to dote on me. He thought I was like the shit, okay? Look at that old big head boy. Ha, ha, ha. He slap his, lap. Come over here. And he would take me on a ride to go to Dairy Queen. He had to clean his car. Uncle Moreland was a trip. And somebody told me recently, did you know that Uncle Moreland used to be the popcorn vendor at the Victory Theater?
Ticket collector.
Huh? Was that you who told me that?
Ticket collector.
Ticket collector. But Uncle Moreland was a trip, and he looked white. But Aunt Lottie did not have any kids, and she was by far the best seamstress. So the kids were wearing clothes that the mothers made or that they had to learn how to make. And Grandpa only needed another pair of overalls. She just had to wash this one while he was wearing that one, and that was it. And then he only had the white pants and the black pants, the black cowboy hat. Like Grandpa's looking like a cowboy when he's going to get his rent. It's like, well, where's your gun, Grandpa? So that was the story. Now, that's the story of Isadore, all right? And he lived to be 105. He told me. Oh, I remember. I went into Grandpa's bedroom one time when I was a kid, and I saw this safe that was wall from the ceiling to the floor almost. And I was like, what? Whoa. I said, well, Grandpa, what's up with that? He said, well, these crackers, they took my money in the Depression. That was when the banks closed and said, we don't have money. And then they had taken his land that was near the beach. And so he was like, you know what? I'm going to keep all my money in my house. And I'm going to get a safe, okay, that you needed to know how to crack a safe to get in. And all of Grandpa's money, he didn't trust the banks, cash. Now, he owned his land, so you can't, they weren't stealing land anymore after, like, the 40s. They stopped just bogarting land. But I heard, this is legend, that my father cracked the safe. And got enough money to go buy himself a Harley Davidson motorcycle when he was 16. And he couldn't keep it at the house. He had to keep it down the block and around the corner. Okay? And then he would be riding around and he thought he was Evel Knievel and also Marlon Brando and also Elvis Presley. So he would, and he was very handsome. Where's Dad? Okay, Vaughn is coming up, but let me get to Dad for a minute. I'm gonna get to everybody. But there's Dad when he cracked the safe. All the girls were all over him. Okay? Like, and including my mother. So Dad cracked the safe. He used to ride down the road and stand up on his Harley without his hands and dazzle all the women who were already dazzled. I was like, Dad, you didn't have to do all of that. What? And he was like, like he wanted them all. And of course, he would wait till they went to sleep early because Grandpa, they were out when the minute it got dark. And that's when Dad would slip out the side window, go down, go get his motorcycle, and go to Fort Lauderdale and have my mother sneak out the window and get on the back, and they would go around doing wheelies. She's the preacher's daughter with the sign of the richest family out boogieing, and their parents are asleep. And I was the product of that opportunity. So that's why you can tell I was a raconteur before I was even born. Look, let me go back. I need to get back to the real deal. I talked about everybody but the most significant African American in the civic life of Broward County in the 20th century. Let me repeat it. The most significant African American in the civic life of Broward County in the 20th century. And let me explain why I say that. Number one, he was the first surgeon. Now, Dr. Sistrunk was the first doctor, okay? He was an old country doctor. He had a black bag. He had an office, but he would come to your house. And, he was great. Dr. Mizell was a surgeon. He went to, Florida Memorial, Morehouse, Meharry, Howard. He went to all the best historically black colleges. All right? And he finished at the top. Plus, he was a womanizer, like most Mizell men. The women had to marry preachers, but the men were not constrained by their libido, including him. And the women liked him as much or more than they liked the women. And so, but that's not the reason he's the most significant. That's a sidebar. What happened was he's the first surgeon. Whoa, the first. There were no surgeons. And why? There was no hospital. Negroes had no hospital, and they could not go to a hospital. Broward General refused to let Negroes in to be treated. Well, a surgeon needs a hospital. A doctor doesn't necessarily need a hospital. He can have a clinic in his house, whatever, or in his office. He can come to your house with a black bag. But a surgeon needs a hospital. Well, guess what? Like Grandpa, we need a school. We need a church. We need a hospital. Okay, that's where the hospital came from. But he went and got with Dr. Sistrunk, and they were simpatico. He's the young Turk, and Dr. Sistrunk is getting old. He's passing the baton. And they build Providence Hospital because one night a black guy got shot in 1937. Now, Dr. Mizell's about, let's see, he was born in 1910, so he was like 26. He's young. And they took him to the hospital, Broward General, in the middle. He's bleeding, and they wouldn't let him in. And he died out on the yard, on the lawn. These white people would not let the dying Negro in. Well, my uncle, it often takes a crisis or something to trigger that extra oomph, determination or whatever. He decides we got to have a hospital, and he's the driving force for the creation of the first black hospital in Broward County, Providence Hospital. And then he becomes the medical director. And, of course, being a Mizell, he built his clinic right next door. So his clinic was right there. He could just go next door into the hospital when it was surgery time. And he ran just like the Mizells, they always ran their businesses at a super high level of professionalism and excellence. Like Grandpa, the way he farmed, the way he built, the way everything. They always wanted their service to be second to none, on a par with what was going on across the track. Every time. Oh, and let me double back just for a hot minute. Let me just be clear. From what I found out, Grandpa had allies in the white community. So it wasn't always crackers against him. There were always, throughout the entire saga of the family, allies of white people, well-meaning, right-thinking white folks who helped. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to get those properties in a certain way. And so I found that out from his own words. I found an article where he said that, there were certain Danes and Jews who helped him at crucial points be able to do what he was trying to do. It was never any crackers. That was against their religion. Okay? Because the Jews were not slave owners. So they didn't have that in their DNA. And the Danes were not slave owners. And there was never any slavery in South Florida. You didn't have that in the DNA of the soil because there was no soil, there was no plantation. By the slavery was over 50 years when they started being able to farm. You could be sure if they had drained that swamp in the 1840s, there would have been slavery. It would have been plantation city, but none of that happened. So that's one thing I want to make sure that I did not know. He said he had several white allies along the way. And the other thing he did was he did not wave his wealth and all of that in front of white folks because he already knew they would kill him. They would lynch him. They would be jealous. He already knew. So that was not going to be something that he wanted to do. And so he was very modest. That's why he always had his overalls on. That's why he always kept his voice down. That's why he never tried to really penetrate. But my father was the complete opposite of that. And that was oil and water. My father wanted you to know, I am the coolest cat in the room. And I inherited that problem. I want all the finest babes. I want all the spotlight. I want it all, and I don't care if you don't like me either. Because all I want you to do is think that I'm cool. But that was not Grandpa, because he came up in a time when that could get you killed. And my father was not born in that period. So, history, milieu has importance. I didn't know that that was the reason Grandpa and my father had problems, other than the fact that he broke the safe and, stole money that nobody was supposed to be able to. Or maybe Grandpa forgot to lock it, but, to your dad, it's like, yeah, I did it. It's like, wait a minute. Maybe he just forgot that day and he discovered it, but he took the money, not all of it, enough to go get the thing he wanted. The Harley Davidson, so I can be Marlon Brando. What? Evel Knievel, Elvis. Okay, sorry. And Mizell's always never conceded that white folks were better than them. The one thing they were not going to do is take orders from them. None of them ever really wanted to, or in fact worked for white people, because they wanted to be in charge of their thing. They wanted to run their own thing, and they wanted to run it very well, and they wanted to serve the community and make money from it and keep the money. You can't have any, including anybody else in the family. You get none. But they're going to serve you, and they're not going to charge family for their service. I mean, Uncle Ivory took pictures. He was the town chronicler for like 40 years. Everything that was ever recorded was, and Uncle Ivory, he never would charge you for a picture that he took, but you couldn't get no money out of it. Dr. Mizell would never charge you one dime, but you couldn't get no money out of him. You could get buried by Roy, but you weren't going to get no money out of him. Okay? And Grandpa wasn't going to give you any money unless you were trying to go to school. And he knew you didn't need any to go to church, so forget that angle. That's the Mizell ethos. And I'm going to serve you in a way that is fitting and proper, and I'm not going to overcharge you. I'm not going to cheat you. I'm going to give you the service that we're supposed to have as the people that we say we are. And I'm not going to overcharge you. And even more, I will let you owe me. Von D served so many in the community that never paid a bill, but they had a bill. He would just let it go. They were interested in serving the community, but they wanted to make money, and they did not want to work for white people. But they had white allies. But that was on the quiet, because the only thing worse than a nigger in America is a nigger lover. And a white person found out to be for black people would get exiled, and they could get lynched themselves. They'd be banished to Siberia. That had to be on the QT. That's why I didn't find this out. They really, when Von D, he was a civil rights leader. I'm jumping around. He did the hospital. 1943, the Negroes had to go out to the fields when it was farm season. Regardless, they closed school. 1943, when it was farm season, school's out. You Negroes get out there and get to pick those beans, whatever. Well, and so the school was not accredited. Dillard was not accredited. And Dr. Mizell, who has got this phenomenal educational achievement, which I'm happy to say I'm in there too. And I know that from whence that came was me, because he was my hero. But he fought to get that stopped. They killed it. They stopped making Negroes go to the fields, and he got Dillard High accredited. Now, this is the second thing he did. You don't have accreditation? I'll get it. Third, okay, now they outlawed Negroes at the beach in 1945. How about that? Now, Negroes have been there longer than the white people that they now want to attract. That's why they outlawed them. After World War II, there was the naval base and all of that. And then they look around, they're like, oh, this is pretty nice. Now, Palm Beach had the rich white folks, super rich, Kennedys and these people. And, Miami Beach had the Jews, and so did Hollywood. Fort Lauderdale was lagging. It was kind of like, and so what happened was they decided, the developers, we want to turn it into a middle class community, because exploding. We want to get the young white families, and build up the economy. Yeah, but we can't have Negroes at the beach. Now, the Negroes they had a way to go to the beach, but they couldn't just go all over, but they could go to the beach, and then they outlawed going to the beach at all. Well, wait a minute. Now, Grandpa and them, they found a way in Dania to go through somehow and get to the beach, but it wasn't illegal. Well, in fact, they used to find a way to go fishing, to get fish. But he said, no. So he formed the NAACP. The first NAACP chapter in Broward County was formed, and not always only by him, because he always did things. He did the hospital with Dr. Sister. He did the hospital, but he would be the one who had enough money and enough moxie and balls to fight. He was a fighter, and he had a lot of ego, like me, like myself. It's a disease we have. We don't like to be subordinated. We don't like to be ignored. We don't want to be exploited. And we're not going to take it. And we're going to fight. Okay, that's it. Okay, so he forms the NAACP, and then they start fighting to get a colored beach. Okay, how can we be in paradise, in beach land, and the whole thing's about to blow up because of that, and we can't go to the beach? Are you kidding? Nah, this looks like a job for Superman. Okay? He starts. Listen, he had to petition for 7 years. Kept getting turned down. But he was a Republican, which I couldn't figure out for the longest. Are you kidding? And he always wore a bow tie, which I couldn't figure that out either. And he always had on suspenders, which Grandpa used to wear on Sunday with his white shirt. And, I have a picture of him somewhere in his bow tie. There he is. He's in a bow tie right there. All right, and they fought, and he finally got a colored beach. He petitioned before the authorities for 7 years, and they finally relented. 7 years for Negroes to be able to go to beach in beach land? Are you kidding? And we're the OGs. We were here before y'all got here. Are you kidding? But he never quit, and he never kissed ass. He never begged, and he was never afraid because he always believed in the law. He thought, like Martin Luther King, the law was the way to go. Use the law, but you need to be able to be independent of economic pressures, because if you have to acquiesce to the money people, you're going to have to kiss their ass, and they'll be more interested in what they're talking about than what you're talking about, no matter what they say. He knew that. Boom, Colored Beach, 1954. Now you had to go on a ferry boat to get there, because where they picked it was the least desirable land in the county. It was what they used to call the armpit of Port Everglades. It was where they used to drop smuggling drugs and dead bodies from the mob, which had taken over. Okay, that was where they, we'll put the Negroes here. You can't drive. You have to get on a boat. You have to wade through, alligators. You might die trying to go to the beach. Good. Okay, and it's right by the port where, all the ships or whatever, ain't nobody gonna want to come here. This is not Las Olas A1A. This is not Hollywood Beach. This is the armpit. And if you don't catch that boat, when the sun go down, you'll be dead overnight. If the alligators don't get you, the smugglers will. And if they don't get you, the mob is. So now you Negroes be happy now. So our Von D says, okay, we need a road. We need a road to the beach. Well, you're not getting one. Don't you understand? Fall off the boat and let the alligators get you. And the boat would be packed with Negroes, wobbling. But when I went, I thought, oh shit, this is fantastic. This is like Jungle Gym, man. Look at this shit. I might be Tarzan. Whoa. I thought it was the best thing in the world. It's all original Florida, okay? It's the untamed last. Like Joni Mitchell said, this was where they didn't pave over paradise and put up a parking lot. Whoa. But I thought, I'm Jungle Jim. Shit, I might jump off the thing and wrestle an alligator. I'm like 9 years old. I think it's like wee doggy. I don't know what I don't know. I know I've been watching too much TV and I'm confused. But the beach was fantastic. Why? Well, we're over there. We're not under the prying eyes of disapproving white folks, okay? We're in the untamed frontier of the beach. It's old Florida. It's the original Florida. And my best friend's father, Mr. Lamar, he's in charge of the beach. And he's like a Greek god in his in his red Speedos, walking around posing so all the other women would think, don't you want some? And Mr. Lamar had been a star football player, really handsome. And I was like, I want Mr. Lamar to be my daddy. Because my dad had moved to Bahamas with Miss Bahamas. It left my mother crying. So I was wanting a dad, and Mr. Lamar was going to be him. I mean, he's in charge, by the way. He's running everything. And we're having fun. We had so much fun. The degree to which we had fun cannot be overstated. Okay? It was like another planet. And the white people really didn't give a shit. They thought, good, but they don't even know. The black experience so often is to take something that is not supposed to be good and turn it into something that's fantastic. as long as the white people don't get involved. But they don't know that. Shh, don't tell them. And we had fun. So Dr. Mizell petitioned and petitioned and petitioned again another 7 years to get a road, and it ain't happening. So now he is got fighting to get a lot of fronts. He wants to get Broward General integrated. So, he can, he wants to desegregate everything. And so now it's around 1961. He's the founder, chairman of the NAACP, but he hands the baton to running it to Eula Johnson. This is when women weren't getting any power. That's how advanced he was. I don't know if she was his girlfriend, but the one thing, she was independent herself. She owned a gas station. She was beautiful, and she was a pistol. And then he said, okay, I know what we're going to do. Kennedy gets in. I know how to get a road to the beach. We're going to go and do a wade-in on Las Olas Beach. And I guarantee you the next day, these crackers will put a road to the colored beach. So here we come. It's 1961. Lorraine, home from college, the daughter of Ivory, and her colleagues from Dillard High, they come home, and Dr. Mizell says, okay, we're fixing to go down to the beach. And of course, he was such an icon, like Lorraine used to say, we did whatever he said. It was unquestioned. We don't even know why we're doing. And they're in college because they knew they could trust whatever the deal was. They get in the car. Lorraine, stand up, Lorraine, please. They get in the car, and they go down in his car, Eula Johnson, Lorraine, two other people, and he's in his freaking bow tie at the beach with his stethoscope or whatever. She's in her chiffon dress, like, what? You go into the beach, like they're dressed like they're going to church or into the hospital. I don't know what Lorraine and them had on. And he tells them, okay, go into the water. And they did it. They were not scared because, you could get killed, lynched, shot, whatever, arrested. They just did it. They trusted him. They get in the water. All the white people jump out the water like, what? The Negroes got in the beach with us? Yeah. Yeah. How about it? And he's standing there, and she's standing there, like, black and white woman, white woman. And they in the beach, and now here come the cops. And Lorraine could tell the story better than me. She was there, but she can't tell it better than me. But she knows better than me. She was actually there. And she's very happy not to say anything. So I'm going to leave her alone. But at the end of the day, here come the cops, and then they tell them to get out, but they don't get out until Dr. Mizell tells them to get out, which was a signal too. But at least the cop did not come in shooting and beating heads. They got out, and then they left. Well, that was the first of several wade-ins. The next ones were led by Eula Johnson, because Dr. Mizell had other things to do. He just had so many, and he was getting older, not too old, but getting older. And she had it, because she was just like him, fearless. And, and they were allies. She was his protege. Boom. Well, the next day, the city of Fort Lauderdale sues to have the segregation laws of public facilities affirmed. But Kennedy had just appointed a new district court judge and Dr. Mizell was the one who financed the defense, because he paid for everything, because he had all the money. Like Grandpa, going to church. But not to keep it, use it. Okay? And he was the one who defended all the lawsuits, because he believed in the law. He paid for them. And then he finally brought some lawyers. He recruited them. George Allen, Alcee Hastings. These cats were recruited by Dr. Mizell to come. And they told me, both of them, that if it wasn't for him, they couldn't have kept their doors open. They had a law firm together before they spun off. If it wasn't for Dr. Mizell keeping us busy, we wouldn't have been able to keep our doors open. They told me that directly. He recruited a lot of black professionals as the community was expanding and growing. Because this was the period when Black Fort Lauderdale exploded. This was the period when Robert was born. Okay? He's a native. So he knows. He came up under this when it was exploding. And he was the guy, Dr. Mizell was the guy who was leading marches down the street in his bow tie, all the time. And he was connected to the Black Civil Rights Network of the NAACP, which was throughout the state. And Fort Lauderdale was lagging behind. Miami was leading. St. Augustine was leading because that was the original place where black folks were, up there. Florida Memorial. Okay? That area. And of course, they were the ones who did the first wade-ins. But he said, well, let's do a wade-in. Okay? Virginia Beach had done something down like that. And he was plugged into all these cats. And he recruited the guy who got bombed out and his house burned up, who was leading the St. Augustine thing down here, the dentist, I forgot his name. But Dr. Mizell built the backbone of the professional, not the teachers, they were here, and not the businessmen, the entrepreneurs, but the professional class. He recruited lawyers, doctors, dentists, and this and that. So they sued, and they sued. He defended. You're interrupting me. Don't interrupt me. Don't interrupt me. You're blowing my rhythm. I'm on a roll. All right. Guess what? They ruled for the NAACP, and that's how the desegregation of public facilities in Broward County happened. All right? Dr. Mizell. Got that? I'm just giving you the litany of things that he did fearlessly and the first. Then he sued Broward General to desegregate it, and they tried to get his license stripped from him to prevent him to be able to go there by accusing him of fraud with insurance. See, because the black patients, if they didn't have money, they didn't have insurance, but most black folks did. That was important. Black insurance companies, they paid him. So he didn't have to depend on it. But that didn't keep him from trying to do what he felt was what needed to be done. And guess what? They almost succeeded. But Dr. Mizell called up Dr. King and told Kennedy. And then Kennedy placed him on the National Medical Examiners Board. And then they forced them to let him in because he was on the national. What you gonna do now, buddy? Okay, but he was the first guy to practice at Broward General. Well, the minute that happened, they forced the closure of Providence Hospital. That's what you get, Negro. Okay, for being an uppity Negro, we'll just close your hospital. All right. Then George Allen wanted to sue to desegregate the schools. Now, Nova High was created without segregation. And I was one of the first students to step through the door, 1963. But George Allen wanted to sue, and Dr. Mizell financed that lawsuit, which was the basis that forced the public schools in 1969. Well, in 1970, the state decided that they were going to transfer the colored beach, which had a road. Oh, by the way, the next day when they won the suit, then they put the road in the next day, like he had said. but the Negroes would continue to go wherever. And then now here come the white kids that were down here for, where the boys are. They like, oh, this is the best beach. God, oh. So they're driving there because it's all integrated. So all of a sudden, the colored beach is not the colored beach. You can drive there, and the white kids like it as much or more than they do. Like it's too many, parking lot cars. We'd rather be in the jungle, making out. Okay, so history is funny. It's got unintended consequences. The bottom line is that Dr. Mizell, the county decided to sell the beach to the state. And if we're going to do that, before they did that, they named it for John U. Lloyd, who was the lawyer who had been resisting the creation of the colored beach back in the 40s. But he was doing that under orders of the county. And we have a county commissioner here who is now, would not have been possible back then. And what happened? That was in 1970. They named it John U. Lloyd as they turned it into a state park. Well, I wasn't here. I was gone. I was at Swarthmore College at the time and headed for Harvard Law School. And I didn't know anything about it. I wasn't even thinking about Fort Lauderdale anymore. I was not coming back. I was like, nah, I had enough of that. Even though I had been the president of Nova High and I had been the first black president of a white student body in the state, I just really had enough of Fort Lauderdale. I was headed for Hollywood, which is where I went, so I didn't know. But when I returned, I saw John U. Lloyd's name on there. I was living on the beach in Dania. And I was like, what is up with that? That should not be named. So I started doing research and I set out on a campaign to get the name changed. And I started giving speeches. I went to Lorraine, as she knows. I went to my other Mizells, and I was like, listen, I'm fixing to go after this. And she didn't say this. She said, well, I'm in, I'm down, I'm with it, let's go. Being a Mizell, she has her own business. She doesn't take orders from white people. She has money. She's totally in the template, okay? And, and she's a fighter. If she believes in what is the deal, and she's for the family legacy. And that's because of her father, who had the utmost respect for the family legacy, and also for Dr. Mizell, his older brother. So she grew up in that, and I knew that, even though she was older than me. Don't forget it. And so I started giving speeches and writing articles and going to historical societies and lectures and this and that and fighting. I never tried to organize a group. I never went to the politicians. I wanted to drum up and put the truth out there. I believe in the truth, and I believe that I found out, okay, now look, under state law, if you're going to name a state park for some person as opposed to the environment or something, it's got to be the person that has the most significant relationship to the creation and or the development of that beach, that park. Well, that's Dr. Mizell. It's not even Eula Johnson. It is certainly not John U. Lloyd. And so I'm a lawyer. All right, well, that's the law. Okay, well, how about it? Well, they're about to change the name. And I find that out. And Robert McKenzie's close ally and pal and friend, Chris Smith, was a major domo in the state legislature. He didn't really know the story. He had been misinformed. And it was about to go down that it wasn't going to be Mizell Park until I made this film. I only showed you an excerpt of it that showed the minutes from the county meetings for 7 years. Dr. Mizell, over 7 years, petitioning the county about the beach. It doesn't mention anybody else. And it shows John U. Lloyd arguing against it. But they sent him to go make the purchase of the land, but he was just an employee of this, taking orders. Dr. Mizell was doing something nobody was asking him to do. Nobody was forcing him to do. And, and then he could go on the beach and pass for white if he wanted to. He wasn't doing it for himself. Well, that was why he was always my hero when I was in high school. I couldn't figure out, why do you even bother? You got all the women, you got all the money, you could pass for white. What the fuck? He told me, he said, I fight for them because they can't fight for themselves. And I was like, oh, whoa. So that's when he became my hero, forever. Because to me, that is a hero. That's a selfless warrior. He's not getting the benefit. In fact, they want to kill him. They're trying to kill him. And he doesn't stop. Well, if that's not a hero, I don't know. And if that's not a role model, what is wrong with me? Okay? And I never, ever forgot that. And so at the end of the day, Dr. Mizell was that kind of a fighter. And so all these things happen, and that's why I say he's the most significant African American in the civic life of Broward County in the 20th century. Okay, we got the beach renamed at the last minute, courtesy of Robert McKenzie. Please stand, Robert. Robert is the one who told Lorraine the vote was about to go down and wasn't going to happen. And I said, well, this looks like a job for Superman. And that weekend, I went crazy. I was bugging the shit out of Lorraine. I was all over. She's like, leave me alone, okay? It's too late. No, it isn't. It's not too late. Look, we got the truth. I got this film. Chris has just got to see the film. He's a lawyer. I'm a lawyer. It's a law. He's not going to do that. He's not. But if Robert hadn't have told Lorraine, I wouldn't have known and I wouldn't have put on my cape. I had a weekend. We went and got with Evan Jenny, who was Chris's close ally. I said, courtesy of Lorraine, because I didn't know him. She got the meeting Monday morning. Well, we went in there. I was like, Evan, let me just tell you right away. Now the vote's about to go down that night or whatever. And I like, hey, I'm telling you, you look at this film. And if you think after you look at it that it shouldn't happen, okay. But if you do me a favor, if you look at it and you see that, get this film to Chris and get Chris to see the film. And then if Chris doesn't do it, something is wrong with Chris. And tell him I'm going to let everybody know. Well, Chris saw the film, and at the last minute, he did the right thing. Chris Smith is the real hero. If he had not done this, because the train had left the station. Okay? The train had left the station. And Chris stopped the train, backed the train up, and put Dr. Mizell on board. And I said, you got to put Dr. Mizell first. And you better put doctor in front of his name, too. Okay? Don't just put Von D. Mizell. Doctor. He's a doctor. But he's not just a doctor. He's a fighter. He's a warrior. And that's what Chris did. And that's why the park is named for Dr. Mizell. Thank you.
And he's still alive.